People use video rather than text when they want to make a fairly big impression in a fairly short amount of time. Often they use green screen because it gives them almost unlimited options for any kind of idea they'd like to express. But some are a little careless with it, like people can be with fire. And make no mistake, green screen is just like fire. It can power your ideas to infinity, or it can burn you to the ground. And just as in building any good power source, the key is in the setup. When people set up a green screen, they usually stand very close to it because they've chosen a room they see as small, like an office or bedroom, and given what else is in it, like a bed, a desk, or bookshelves, they feel a little squeezed. But here's what that looks like when it's edited together. This person does not look like an expert, let alone an authority on anything. All those crazy, creepy crawlies suddenly make you feel itchy. That's actually caused by 7 mistakes. So even if you promise never to stand too close to the screen again, you could work on this for years and never solve it. If you'd like to be more visible in the world, to be a better communicator with video, and look like a pro while you're doing it, then this lesson is for you. In this video, we're going to look at how to make an almost perfect green screen for a talking head video like this. And you'll get a list of exactly what tools you'll need to make it all come together. We'll be shooting in a 3 square meter space inside an 8 by 10 foot or 5 square meter room. The idea is to have plenty of room to maneuver so you can make the whole thing push button fast, simple, and convenient. If you click on the link above, you can get the floor plan that shows how all this is set up and where to get everything I'm using here. You'll also save money by not buying things you don't need. Oh, by the way, welcome to the Visible Authority, where people come to learn how to use their business to inspire the world and create more freedom, time, and resources to do what they came here for. Obviously, a visible authority will want to communicate in the most effective way possible. Often that means using a green screen. So we'll look at the rules, the tools, and the setup. We're actually seeing right now how it all works together. So for a few years now, I've been shooting green screen in a 13 by 11 foot space. But recently, I decided to see if I could make my green screen shoots better. And in the process, I learned that I could also cut down greatly on the space I was using, from 13 by 11 foot to 8 by 10 foot. That may not sound like much, but what it means is that anyone can now get amazing results in almost any room in their house or office, provided they pay attention to a few rules. Let's go through them briefly, then in detail, and you'll see just how well they all work together, like peanut butter and jelly. Number 1, you need more light than you think you do, because your camera doesn't see just like your eye. It's not nearly as efficient. Number 2, the light must be even across the entire green screen, or you end up with a green screen of many colors, and that will drive your editing program nuts. 3, you must light the subject separately from the background, from the green screen, or you get all kinds of strange artifacts, rings, and halos. 4, the green screen must receive less light than the subject to avoid bouncing color back on the subject. 5, expose for the foreground, not the background. And when you light it, as in rule number 4, oh, that's so much easier. 6, avoid shadows because they change the color of the green screen too. And 7, keep your screen taut. I mean Botox taut, so it couldn't smile if it wanted to. Otherwise, you violate rule number 6, because a wrinkly screen produces hundreds of shadows. As you can see, 6 out of 7 of our rules have to do with how you treat light, which brings us back to rule number 1, more light. However much light you think you need right now, you probably need more. And that's because even though your lighting instrument puts out, say, 800 lumens, which sounds like an awful lot, your camera can only see so much of it because of the size of the imaging sensor. Smartphones have the smallest sensors, so they need the most amount of light. DSLRs have the largest sensors, so they need the least amount of light. And many camcorders, like the one we're using now for this demonstration, are somewhere in the middle. Whatever camera you use, you need enough light to get a clean green screen effect. What we want to avoid is the kind of Star Trekian transporter effect, but like where they never quite solidified, hair and clothing kind of dancingly digital. But with this method, as you can see, everything in the frame is settled down, no movement, with sharp definition, including hair, even white hair, even while standing ridiculously close to the green screen. For this camera, we're going to use a total of 190 watts of fluorescent light, supplemented by 45 watts of LED light. But how will we distribute that light? That we do in rule number 2. The light must be even across the screen. So you can just blast a bunch of light at the green screen from 2 spots, but unless it's really, really soft light and the surface that needs to be covered is really very narrow, it's going to create hot spots and dark spots. But when we set our lights evenly across the screen, we get more even coverage. And that's where the LEDs come in. So we'll use one of our 85-watt fluorescent lamps in this softbox on the right and another on the left, just far enough away from the screen so that we don't see the box in the frame, and the light from each box gets all the way to the center of the screen. Looks like 30 or so inches. Now, I've added 3 small LED lights along the bottom of the screen to even out the coverage, each about 18 inches from the screen. So far, so good. So let's go on to the third rule. Light your subject separately. Everything we've done so far has been about lighting just the green screen. We now need to add a set of lights just for the subject standing in front of the green screen. This gives you good separation from the background and thus less green color reflected back on the subject. And to help you do that even better, it's usually a good idea to add a top light that hits the subject on the back of the head and shoulders. What you should see if you were looking at just that lighting would be the person in silhouette with no discernible features. Rule number 4, the lighting ratio. A good rule of thumb is to light what's in front of the green screen with more than half again as much light as the background. So in this case, we just load up 2 more soft boxes with 2 85-watt lamps each, a little less than double what we gave the green screen. We place them then at 45-degree angles off the camera, about 5 feet from our subject, and we're good to go there. So we're well set up to implement our 5th rule. Expose for the foreground, not for the background. This is another way we prevent the reflection of all that green coming back on us. In fact, we've gone to great lengths to light the scene so that we can expose for the foreground without worrying about what the background will do to our shot. This is doubly important if you want to stay closer to the background. Now, as far as exposure, use an f-stop that allows you to select 0 gain or ISO setting. Anything over 0 introduces artifacts into the picture. And for green screen, the last thing we need to be doing is making it harder for the editing program to give us a clean result. So instead, try to get as low an f-stop as you can. The lower the f-stop, the less likely it is that the camera will try to add gain. In this case, it looks like the ISO setting at 6 has awakened our 70% zebras, which means we're now exposing for the background, but we don't want to do that. So we can either bring the frames per second up to 90, or keep using 60, which is more the standard, and lower the gain down to 0. This will make the zebras run away again. We'll set it there. And that brings us to rule 6. Avoid shadows because they change the color of the green screen. This can be a real problem because a green screen with inconsistent colors can really mess up your key. The key is what you get when you first click the button in your editing program that removes the green screen background. So, where do these shadows come from? lighting instruments and stands that are closer in than usual, as well as someone standing so close to the background. We can satisfy this rule by having our front lights high enough that any shadows from them either fall to the ground instead of the screen, or other lights hitting the screen make them go away. Another way is not to get too close to the screen. The idea is to stand just in front of the light that's lighting the green screen. It's even okay if some of it hits you from behind, as long as you don't feel it on your face. In this case, about 40 inches from the screen should do fine. The seventh and final rule is to make sure your screen is taut. You don't want any wrinkles that will cause shadows, which changes the color, which messes up the key all by itself. So use clamps or clips or ties, do whatever it takes to eliminate all the wrinkles. I found one of the best ways to get rid of wrinkles is not to buy a green screen that comes with wrinkles. A few are designed not to wrinkle in the first place, and there are links to these in the PDF. And that's it. Now, just 2 words of caution. As I said in the opening, this method creates an almost perfect green screen, not a perfect one. So here's a simple hack to make sure the little flaws are never detected. If you key in a very light or very dark background, the fine details will start to lose resolution, to look a little wavy, a little digitally. That's just a natural result of shooting so close to the background with limited amounts of light. But as long as you keep your background in the middle ranges, say between 40 and 60% of white, your result will look just as clean as nearly anything Hollywood can produce. And second, remember, this method uses the amount of light necessary to get this result with a camcorder with a 1-inch sensor. For a DSLR, you'll probably be able to cut back to as much as half the amount of light, and for a smartphone, you may have to double it. Well, as Video Yoda says, "A Jedi Knight you are, ready to shoot you must be." So, here is the question, my Jedi Knight. Which of these 7 rules do you think will make it easiest for you to achieve the visible part of becoming a visible authority? Don't forget to pick up your floor plan for this setup and my recommendations on equipment and prices to make your next green screen shoot a huge success. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on The Visible Authority.